Hello, hello, sweet souls, and welcome back to another episode of It's All Happening. And today I am beyond excited to continue on a conversation that was started a few months ago, a chance encounter, to re-platform and reconnect over this incredible piece of art that just kind of fell into my lap randomly scrolling through social media. And that has been such a timely encounter as I am on an ever deepening walk with faith, as so many of you are. So welcoming back onto the show for the second time today, Danny Lesslie, the author of Thank You, Cancer. If you guys haven't already, if you're listening now, highly suggest go back to our first episode. I will drop that link in the show notes below so that you can kind of get the foreground for what we're going to continue on today. But last time I had Danny on the podcast, we had just randomly synchronistically met through social media. I ordered his book based off of the content that he was putting out and just having such a sheer interest in the story that he was telling about himself and his wife and his family and their journey with cancer. And since then, the book has come out. It is fully here in live in color, and I have fully read the entire book, finished it literally as of this morning while we're having this conversation. Without further ado, thank you so much again for being here and thank you for this. I'm excited to talk about this.
I'm so honored to be here, and there's nothing I would rather talk about.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, last time we connected, the book wasn't even out yet. We were talking about the excitement of like all of the pieces coming together, and you told
But yeah, I didn't remember it wasn't out yet. That's right.
It wasn't out yet, and you had told a beautiful kind of synchronistic story that's actually inside of the book about the coming together of the publishing and like how your incredible wife was continuing to speak to and through you through this project. So like, how does it feel for it to have just landed into the hands of those who have ordered it so far?
It's really, it's really crazy. It's crazy to write a book and to like get the thing and it's finished. That's a really weird thing to experience. The real surprise for me has been in sending also her words out into the world, and people are receiving her words, and I'm hearing back from them on kind of a conversation that is happening between her and them, which is really a beautiful thing. You know, we discussed this earlier, but people have called me and said, you know, hey, or messaged me and said, hey, I feel like I have a friend in her. I feel like she speaks to me, which is so wild. People have said, I feel like she's in the room with me when I'm reading. And it's just such a cool thing. It's like not that I didn't intend it to happen, but I didn't think that it was going to happen. And it is happening, and people are connecting with it in ways that I, as a male, a person that hasn't gone through cancer, could not connect with someone. It's because of her voice. It's because of who she was. And I feel so fortunate to be able to have helped create a space that allows her story to keep moving forward. And it's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy. And it brings me such joy. And it's so weird because there's also this sadness that's always here. But hearing from people and hearing messages from people, and like, this story changed my life. This changed my perspective. This changed how I looked at my illness. All of these things are such gifts. And I feel like she would be so proud. And that's so cool. You know, that's just, it's a gift.
It is a gift, and a gift that gets to, like you just said, it just gets to keep giving. And I know something that we had connected over, we had a bit of a conversation, I think, on the last podcast, and like just between the two of us personally, around God and faith and spirituality and energetics. And as I am someone who is coming 2 feet home to such a deep relationship with God, there cannot be a denial of those energetics, of the essence of someone and how they live on. And I remember you saying previously that like your greatest goal, obviously you needed a place for your grief to go. This was a dream that you guys had talked about doing this thing together. That you, like, your biggest why was just that you wanted her to live on. You wanted people to know her essence, and the capturing of those words in such a raw time. Like, as somebody who has read the book, I can also mirror that back to you, that Absolutely. Like I felt like I was talking to her. I felt like I was learning directly from her about her experience and about what she was navigating and how it felt. Also feeling this sense of like this, you narrate her as this like giver, that she just gave everything of herself, and even in the words that are put in this book, like she was giving through her illness to other people,
She was.
and hope and points of view and spaces to land. Like how many times her words said, like, if you need somebody to talk to about this thing, I'm going through this massive thing, but if you need someone to talk to
Yeah.
about what you're going through, like reach out to me.
That was her. I mean, that was her from when she was a kid. She was that way. She was always this ever giving like mother figure. She was always that, and she just would give to. And I'm not sure. I think it's in the book, but I would like listen. You've got to focus on you because and I think she was just like, that's not me. That's not how I roll. And God bless her. I just I loved her for it. It would just that was her.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, she was amazing.
Yeah. And that is so fully, I mean, I learned that through our conversation last time, but I hadn't read the book, right? I got to learn about her through your voice, but as you reflect, like I wanted people to know her for her, and this did such a beautiful job of that. Like you said, you're having people reflect back to you. Like I feel like I'm hearing her voice at certain times, or she's in the room with me when I'm reading, and like I really feel like I
That's
fully
awesome.
know her, and that is just so beautifully conveyed. I want to name, we did speak about this in the last episode, but for anybody who is maybe catching up or didn't take the advice to go back and listen, just sort of the way that the book is set up, like how you put it together to create, I know you said this idea of like as if we were just sitting around a fire and you guys were
Yeah.
telling us your story.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like how
Okay.
how you structured the book and why you
So
structured it that way.
I've after she passed, I didn't set out to write the book. I was writing to for my own sanity, and I came upon some of her entries from she wrote the whole time she was sick, and I took those and I was like, you know what? I could drop all of those into a time, and that would let her tell her own story, basically. And I did that, but what I had was a very sparse story over 5 years. So I took my own writings from the time. So I'm a big believer that when you write something like in the moment, when something's going on, the words you use have teeth to them. They have an emotion that is not capturable from a distance of years in recalling them. So most of the book are in the moment writings. They're very raw. They're very vulnerable. They're right there. And so I took hers and then I matched mine in with hers, and then it became kind of like a patchwork quilt of sorts, but it had like pieces missing. So I went through as a narrator, like in today's voice, and I like added a patch here, added some context there, laced some things together, and basically made it into a story that you could read as a reader and follow it. Because if it was very jumpy before I did that, because of the nature of how the writings were placed, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. And then also inside of that, we spoke about this on the last episode as well, but the areas that are boxed off in gray of
Yeah.
all of the moments.
So there's the story is told in two voices. So there's her voice and then there's my voice, which hearing the same story from two people gives you a lot more perspective. So I was going back through when I was writing and reading what she wrote about the same thing I wrote about, but there was so much depth to it and so much more color coming from her as well. And I was learning things about our own life in reading her writings that I hadn't read before. But then there were these moments, and there's a lot of them. Like, I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot. Probably 50. I don't know. There's a lot. There were moments when things would happen and they were completely unexplainable. So for us, we started to call them Jesus moments. And these were things like, we needed a bunch of money and the money just shows up from a different place multiple times, crazy stories. And we can talk about them if you want. But those Jesus moments are also in the book, and they have a shaded background to them. So, and then along with the shaded background, my current pastor, who's a very good friend of mine, added a Bible verse for each Jesus moment. So what you have is you have three voices telling a story. You have Raffi's voice, you have my voice, and you have God's voice, all telling you one story that effectively leads to him. It's
Mm.
his story. We were just front row for it. And that's the truth, right? I'm not claiming control of all this, right? This is like I was just there.
Yeah. I was just the participant in the
Yeah.
story that was
Yeah.
playing out before me. Did you know when you sat down to write the book that it was going to lead to him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because that was my story. It was, she I'm like God knew that I would do anything for her. He found his way into my heart through her.
Mm.
I grew up Lutheran. I grew up like in the church doing, the religious things, let's say. But I didn't figure out that this whole game is a relationship with Jesus game until all this came about, until the unlayering of our life started. Lose a job, lose another job, lose a house, lose all your money, have to relocate a bunch of times. You think your wife's going to die for 5 years. Then you lose your wife. It's like, okay, in all of that unlayering, we started to see and then God kept showing up for us in these ways that are ridiculously undeniable. I mean, they're insane. And the evidence that we started to get was like, okay, I see him showing up for us in these very tangible ways. And so that was where the whole path led. And I knew the path led there. It was just as a writer, how do you take the path there? And I wanted to specifically write about our love story. I wanted it to be about that. And I didn't want to focus on just the cancer. The cancer is a is a perspective, but it's not the story. Like it's a love story. It's a story of hope. It's a story of loss, yes, but it's much more than just an illness, and she was so much more than that too. And I wanted to paint who she was and to make it clear how beautiful of a person she was in this world. And I think I did a decent job at that. I
I
hope.
did.
I was very
I mean, I
concerned with that whole thing.
just by receiving all the reflections that you have from near perfect strangers on the internet of their reflections, and then also just to name of my own, like something that I find so beautiful that actually really choked me up this morning. I have a dear friend of mine who is going through, she just received her third cancer diagnosis, and we together in our friendship, but also like collectively in our lives, are just noticing that the entire illness is pointing her home to God, has pointed us home to God, has helped point me home to like the way that it is
Yeah.
working. And as you, with the words that you were able to put into the story that came directly from her heart inside of her experience, I feel like it's helping. It has to be helping people who are going through it themselves, but also helping people who are in relationship to people who are going through it, and like witnessing this insider experience of like the process of what's going on internally, mind, body, and spirit, when you're
Yeah.
moving through something as existential as that.
Yeah, and we did one thing really well is we always chose each other. And there was, there's so many struggles inside of a cancer experience, right? There's obviously the physical struggle, but there's your relationship, and there's parenting, and there's yourself, herself. There's all of these things that are at play, and we wanted to discuss those. And we talked about that. We wanted to discuss them from 2 points of view because, I write about this in the book, like it's important that you have intimacy, except ours was kind of like turned off, but it's still important that you have intimacy, and that matters. Like your relationship matters, and that became very challenging towards the end because everything was very logistical. Wound care and all the things were just taking up all of the time and all of the energy. Like where do we do like romantic things and like care for each other, and that's heartbreaking, but that's the reality of it. And it's important, I believe, and she believed as well, to talk about these things because lots of people go through them, and there's as much suffering as you want in all of those scenarios. And if you don't talk about it, I don't know how you hold all that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of, you just named like marriage and parenting and logistics, and like I am only in a marriage, I'm not even a parent yet, and we're not going through anything anywhere near as existential, and it's still a struggle, right? We still
Always.
need God inside of that. We like, even just our marriage alone has turned us to this faith that has to be so much bigger than just ourselves. And I'm curious for you, was God the space that you were able to find that deeper intimacy in a time when you, I mean, everything else sort of went out the window?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intimacy ways, you know, and there's I think there is spiritual intimacy, and it's like, are you seeking God together? Because our first allegiance is to God. It's not to each other. Our second allegiance is to each other. So each of us needs to be seeking Him individually, but also seeking Him together, you know. And so, yes, that was a form of intimacy. There's also emotional, you know, intimacies. There's physical, which might just turn into holding hands or something. And there's, you know, there's mental. There's all of these forms that you can work on. You know, it's not just having sex,
Mm-hmm.
because if it's that's the only thing you've got, well, in my case, we couldn't do that. So
Yeah.
does your relationship just end? Or and that's not okay, you know? And so we really worked hard to just stay, you know, aimed at each other.
I'm curious for you, now that this book is out to the world and it's in the hands of so many and it's being reflected back to you, like the beauty of this gift that just keeps giving. What is your current relationship? I mean, I know you've named like everything inside of this book, everything inside of this journey has led you back to love and back to him, which I kind of see as like the same thing,
Same
right?
thing.
Yeah. I'm curious what that relationship looks like in your life now, and how is that helping you in like the aftermath of such a huge life transition, such a huge grief?
You know, it's interesting when you lose someone and you watch them die, which is I would not wish on anyone. For me, the resurrection took on so much more importance, which sounds really dumb to say, but it's true. You're like, wait a minute, he just like got back up. So everything love, which our love did not go away. It's still here. She is not here, but our love is here. I will tell you it is here. And so it begs the question, okay, what are you doing here? Because if I invested everything I had in her, which that was my goal, and now she's not here anymore, is life just over? And it's not, right? So then it's like, okay, well, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Like, what's the purpose? Because it's clearly not that. And so, and that was really an interesting moment. And so for me, it kind of broke me out of the mold of it into a bigger picture. It's okay. So what do we want to do, God? How do we move in this world? Because my reality has been shattered. And I still have children and we still have things, you know, we're still walking into our future. And so it really was an interesting it just begs that conversation of like God. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Why am I here? Because I can tell you, if there's no purpose, I don't want to be here because the pain is too much. So how do I move forward from like a heart-centered, like God-focused perspective? Because otherwise, I don't I don't want to play. And that hasn't been my view my whole life.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, when you end up thinking everything's over. Because I hadn't thought past. I thought I did. I thought that I had because when there's an illness, a big illness in the family, as the caretaker, as the spouse, I believe it does you a service to play out scenarios in your head. So if everything goes great, we live our lives together and grow old. And then the other scenario is everything doesn't go great. And I thought I had played that out. I don't think I did a very good job. But I think it's important to do that. And then, I don't know, just life doesn't go how you want sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And we named that a little bit before we got into this conversation, of a realization that someone like myself is like, I'm in a deep walk with God, and I have, by the grace of God, not had something as painful and existential happen in my life as you have had, that's walked me home, right? But the deeper that I go inside of this spiritual walk, it actually becomes like the only sort of thing that I can focus my awareness on, is like I'm so privy to and aware of how much pain is in this world and how much pain is in the human reality in every sort of flavor. No matter which
Yeah.
way you look at it, everybody is suffering with something. And same as you, it's become, as instead of this like very introspective, like, what am I here to do for me, what is my plan, what do I desire to get out of this reality, into the only piece that exists is surrendering into how can I show up better for whatever it is that you have planned. And I think that that can only come from a place of having so much of what you had based your reality and your why and your purpose on previously, right? Having all
Yeah.
of that stripped away, to really look at like, oh my God, how are all of the ways that God has shown up for me inside of this? How has this walked me home to a deeper relationship with him? And now like, and now what do I do with that? What do I do with that?
Yeah, I've wrestled with that a lot because it's when, it's in your mind, I feel like in a relationship, you're on a forever timeline. Like, no, we join forces like for the duration. Like that's what we're doing. We're together.
Mm-hmm.
And then that now isn't the case. And that is really unsettling. And it's like, okay, then what am I doing? Because everything I had based everything on is now gone. So it's like, all right, well, I thought back to like the parable of the talents. You know the parable of the talents?
Not sure.
Okay, so this is a bad rendition, but it's in the Bible. His father gives, or it might have been a boss, I don't know, but he gives money to a couple people that work for him, and he's like, I'm going to go on a trip, and he's like, make more out of the money that I give you, or he gave it to three people, and one he gave a little bit, one he gave more, and one he gave the most. When he came back, two of them had multiplied what he had given them, and the other one had buried it in the ground to save it. And he came back and he was like, he praised the ones that had made more, and the one that didn't do anything with it, he was like, what were you doing? Like, I gave you this to care for, and it's the point is like, listen, we all have abilities, we all have skills, and our job is to multiply those
Mm.
because that honors God. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm here, and now she's gone. I still have my daughters, but I need a path forward. It's like, all right, well, let's just call it a sandbox. Like we each have our own sandbox to play in, right? So you've got some skills and abilities. I have skills and abilities. They're not the same ones. They're different. We all have those. Our job is to multiply our skills and abilities while we're here. And then the crazy part that really is hard for me to grasp is that letting go of the results and trusting that God is going to provide.
Mm-hmm.
And my story is one where I didn't like put forth the work for the result to show up, right? It's not, that's not what happened. I didn't earn the money that we used to care for her, but there was a lot of grace and a lot of angels walking that helped us do this story. And it's like proof that it's like, okay, it may not be about the results. And it's like, I, as a father of two daughters, as a only parent, like I need results. Like I have to put food on the table for my kids. And I think that's the wrong conversation
Yeah.
because I've seen it where I've said, listen, God, I'm going to show up. I prayed the prayer. I think it's in the book. Like, hey, I can't do the finances. I will show up for my family every single day, but I can't do the finances. I need your help. And how many times? I don't know how many. It's more than the fingers I'm showing you right now.
So many.
So many. So it's like, okay, then why am I so concerned?
Yeah.
And when you wake up in the morning, are you saying, how do I go make more money? How do I do this? How do I do that? Or are you like, hey, God, what do you want me to do today? And just trust that, we're more important than the birds.
And how different that is from what we are taught, like what we are taught inside of our society that has
Yeah,
strayed so far away from God. And it's like, that's where like, y'all, anybody listening right now, like this book, it is about love, it is about grief, it is about God. But like, as a woman who is in such a deep walk with God right now, there was so much in here. Like, it's like God was speaking to me through the words that you put in this book about things that are
best
directly
part.
going on in my life right now.
That's
Like
the
when
best.
you bring up the piece about money, right? There's something that's happening inside of my reality right now where there's a big shift happening in how I'm showing up in online entrepreneurship and helping people heal and like recentering God, right? And inside of that, a big piece is like, do you trust me? Like, none of this actually works if you don't trust me. And the wavering that we do, because we've been taught that we are the center of our realities and we are the thing that has to make everything happen. And if you aren't trying and you aren't striving and you aren't struggling, then you aren't going to receive. But to be someone who is leaning even deeper into prayers around that and witnessing miracles happen when we are just like, God, I don't know what to do, but I don't want to try without you. So, like, you show me and show me how you want to show up in this story and show me the moves you want me to make, and I will move them. And the amount of times that you put that testimony in this book is incredible.
Yeah, there were so many times. One of them was so obvious. It was hilarious. We needed $1,000 to do this test. It was in Texas. And we were in Kansas City at the time. And we were like, we didn't have, we needed to pay our rent like 3 days later. And we basically barely could pay our rent. I mean, we were like skimming it, like we got like a tank of gas above rent type deal. And so we're trying to think about this test. And let's say it's like the 27th of the month or something. And we're like, all right, let's do it. It's the thing to do. We prayed about it. Like, I don't know, like, this is what we think we should do. And so we did it, and I was sweating. I was sweating bad, and because we didn't have rent for days later. And then I checked my phone, just trying to like distract myself from the reality. And I had an email from GoFundMe, and they email a day late. So if I put money in your GoFundMe today, you get an email tomorrow, and it said someone put $1,000 in your GoFundMe, but it was the day before. So we were here sweating, like really sweating. And God was like, man, I got you. I already got you. But that's the story. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's just interesting. I don't know. I struggle with it too every day.
I mean, and I think that that's a part of it as well. I'm going to completely butcher this, but I heard a quote of like, the only way that, like, if we knew for certain that things were going to happen, which is something that we can practice in our faith, right? But no matter what, there has to be that edge of like, I'm believing in something I cannot see yet. And if it
Sure.
weren't for that, there would be no such thing as faith. Like, faith wouldn't exist if it weren't for that little bit of a moment where you're like, I don't know, but we're just going to do the thing that we feel like we're being guided to do. And then to have that show up time and time and time again in this story. Like, guys, I cannot tell you enough. And like, you have to, the link for the book is also going to be below. Like, you just got to go and buy it and read it, because the testimony of the ways in which God shows up and shows out, like, and it's not only when we're in times of crisis, it just so happens to be so often in the human experience, times of crisis that lead us to get on our knees in faith. And then that's when God's like, I mean, I'm here all the time, but sure, I'll help you now that you're asking me to.
Yeah, it's that quote. I heard somebody say it the other day. It was that in good times God is heard, in bad times God is seen.
Mm, mm-hmm.
No, that's such a good quote because it's true. Like
Yeah.
when you really need it, that might be why the Americas have such a hard, or America has a hard time with faith, because we have the means to do things.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't know where your lunch was coming from, you better believe you'd be talking to God.
Right.
And it's
Right.
true. When things move outside of your control, because I can't imagine how I would have made it to today if God wasn't a part of our story. Because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do any of it. I was here
Yeah.
for it, but I didn't do any of it. And I don't know. I wouldn't be here.
Right. Right. And simultaneously naming, like, to anybody listening, like, this story is incredible. It's a testimony unlike anything I have really ever heard before. And at the same time, like, you and I, we are just two humans having a conversation where, like, we don't know, and we're just amazed as at the miracles as anybody else. But
Yeah.
the reality of speaking into these sorts of miracles and what that can move in somebody else's life who might have not felt like they've ever had the opportunity or the wherewithal or the desire to lean in towards God, but to hear things like this and like to not have to wait until you're down on your knees and completely distraught and have no other place to turn, but that you can actually just have that in your day-to-day life, inspired by moments like these, that it doesn't have to be like the absolute
Yeah.
end of your rope before you turn to him. And it's, as we're talking about this, I was in I'm at the end of or I'm about to graduate from an ordination program, like a year-long ordination program. And we were reading inside of the Bible scripture the other day that was a piece where God was coming into, or Jesus was coming through a certain town, and it was like a really wealthy town, and he was talking to them about, like, you don't know me because you don't need me, but you don't need to need me in order to know me. That, like, and that speaks so much to what you were just talking about in the Americas. Like, we just have, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're in some pretty rough times right now, but a lot of people have what they need and more so. And that goes back
Yeah.
to how we've been raised inside of this society to just, like, be out for self and only here for self and only rest on ourselves. And then it's moments like these and experiences like these that fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which way it goes, God does use to, like, glorify himself in, like, turn to me, like, stop resting on your own strength, stop resting on what you think that you need to do or figuring it all out on your own, and let me help you, and I will. And just, yeah, I mean, it's happened so many times in my own life, but it becomes like this mundane experience that when you reread it in your story, it just gave me this, like, re-ignition into the fervor that I have for the reality that exists and that it exists for everyone.
Yeah. And there's these, the 4 words, then God showed up,
Mm-hmm.
are the most beautiful words ever, because I will tell you that we live our lives in a frame. Everybody's frame's different, but we all live in this frame. These are the things we have access to. And every time that an answer showed up for us, it came from outside of our frame.
Mm-hmm.
It came from outside of our control. It came from outside of our understanding. And it came in a moment of complete darkness and despair.
Mm-hmm.
Then God showed up, and it
Thank
changed
God.
everything. And it happened again and again and again and again. And that's not unique to me or to Raffi or to you. It's an everyone thing.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we always did was we always took a step. We always made a move. It's like you can't anticipate the problems in traffic if you never drive. You can't sit at your house and be like, well, I'm not sure what'll happen at the exit 247. I'm not sure if I should get over or stay in the right lane. Well, you don't know until you go. It's the same thing. Like, God needs an opportunity to show. He doesn't need an opportunity to show up, but he's going to show up because you step in faith.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is an action thing on our side of the coin. That is a movement. That is not, that's, and you just step forward and God shows up.
Yeah. I mean, it's how we live in the relationship
It is.
to it, right? I mean, going back to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, that, like, if you knew what was going to happen, if you always knew what was going to happen, there would be no need for faith. And I think that's also a tricky thing for people who are beginning to step in faith of, like, all right, well, God, show me that you're going to show up first, and then
Yeah.
I'll.
There's an interesting thing. So that really made me think of things differently. So I thought of my relationship with Raffi, and I was like, okay, did I trust her? It's like, yeah, of course. It's like, okay, like, did I trust that, like, when she was here, did I trust that she was going to show up for us? Like, the next day. I was like, yeah, every time. Like, I have no doubt that we got married. We were for each other. Like, yes. And it's like, well, how come you don't treat God that way? And I was like, this is all happening in my head, by the way. This is not this is my own conversation with myself. And I'm sitting here and I'm like looking at a stack of evidence that's like, it's all right here. Like, it's in a published book, stack of evidence. And I'm still the guy that's like, I don't know. Like, why am I like this? Why does my brain work this way? But it's unfair to God, and I got to be better. And so I think that's the gap I try to close every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just such a natural part of our human nature. And
Yeah.
especially when you named in earlier in this conversation, you named in the last podcast, and I have a very similar story, like growing up inside of religion, but it's like you're just, like, going through the motions of, like, this is what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do, to, like, yes,
Yeah.
okay, God. But the difference between that and what I call, like, an actual awakening to a relationship with God, like, those are two very, very different things. You could be somebody who's inside of religion your entire life and not have a living, breathing
For sure.
relationship with the creator. And I love the way that you just framed that, because I feel like devotional relationship marriage is one of the greatest arenas for God to come into our lives, and for you to
Right.
reflect, like, of course, the love of my wife, of course, the love of my husband is going to show up day in and day out. Like, they
Yeah.
have proven that to me, right? And whereas, like, God has proven that to us time and time again, but we still have this I don't know. And I think something that's really beautiful for me inside of that is I picture like God being so unconditionally loving that he's like, of course, like, you're just a human. Of course it's hard for you to of course it's hard for you to trust. And also when he shows up in the buzzer and is like, don't I always though? Don't I,
Yeah.
like, when are you going to learn that you can stop freaking out, because
Yeah.
I'm always here and I'm always providing.
Yeah. There's an interesting book, and I was trying to see. I think I have it right here. So there's a book called Fathered by God. It's kind of a men's book, but anyways, it's all about our relationship, like as men growing up with God as our father, as opposed to like our father as our father. And it's a very interesting book, but it reframed a lot of this for me because there's a stage in the male growth cycle, let's say, that is called the lover, and there's also one in the female that's the same thing, right? As an adult, you enter this stage that's called the lover, and this book proposes that you should have this love for God as a male before you have this love with a woman, because that's the woman is like God's gift to men on earth, right? That is like the being that like represents God's love for us. And I believe it's the other way around. For women, men are the representation on earth that of God's love for women. And so, but it explains it that way, and then and then it says, and they're given to you. And so it was interesting because I fell in love with my wife first before I entered this loving relationship with God. And it speaks of like intimacy as an intimacy with God. And the Bible talks about David, like his body, like yearning for God. And I was like, okay, I'm having a hard time sorting through that, because for me, like I said, the path I took was from my wife to God instead of God to my wife. Either way, God is a much larger representation of love than our mate. But when you understand it this way, that our allegiance is to God, it's like, okay, that makes things a little bit different, and it changes the relationship there a little bit. And I thought that was pretty profound. I forgot why I was saying it, but it's an interesting thing to think about, that like Raffi was a gift to me
Mm-hmm.
from God. Like, she was a
Mm-hmm.
gift. I could have just easily not met her and not had all of this life that we had together, and who am I to be upset that my gift was 13 years and not, you know what I'm saying, not 40 or whatever. Like that's crazy, so I don't know, it's interesting that lots of things in my head.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel very similarly to you that I had no relationship with God before I got into
Yeah.
the marriage with my husband. And there's actually a particular moment where you named you named earlier in this conversation about there were things that she said and things she articulated and ways that she could relate to the reader that you, like, as a man, or you as a non-cancer patient, like, could never. And there's a point in the book actually that, like, really, really reminded me of the way in which God has used my marriage to walk me home to being able to receive the kind of love that God has for me. Like, yes, from my husband, but then also from, like, God itself.
Right.
And there's a point in the book where Raffi talks about the struggle that she still has with letting you love her. Like, let him love you,
Yeah.
let him love you, let him be there. And just as a woman who I also have other things in common, a history of sexual abuse, like that sort of thing, as a woman, and what you recognize in your healing journey, those things, those instances that you experienced earlier on in your life when you weren't in a, like, godly and devotional love to a man that was fully and unconditionally loving you the way that God does, the way that that creates an imprint in your psyche and in your body, and the work it takes inside of a
Yeah.
devotional union, inside of a marriage, to not just see, like, oh, yeah, of course this person loves me and they're showing up for me, but to allow yourself to let that kind of love in. And that was
Yeah.
like a beautiful moment for me inside of this book of, like, wow, that story is not just my story. Like, that story is, like, the feminine I mean, and I
Yeah.
think it's everybody's story also, but to hear it from her perspective in this moment where, like, of course, all she needed was to be able to fully receive everything that you were offering her. And there's still just being this really real human reality to how difficult that can be.
Yeah, and she worked really hard at all of the things, like healing all of the wounds, all the generational things. She worked so hard at all of that. I mean, it was amazing to watch. You know, it was just her ability to uncover something and deal with it and work through it, and it's just she was incredible.
Yeah. And I think that's a really beautiful for a lot of my audience is definitely female. And for whatever reason, I feel like it is a very feminine route home to God to go the spiritual healing way first, at least in the world that we live in today, to get very interested in the healing and like the trauma healing part and the energetics part and all of that kind of like the magic and the mysticism that also
Yeah,
exists inside of our spiritual reality. And just, yeah, just receiving the reflection that like we are not alone in that, and that journey is such a powerful way to come home to God. And then the reflection in that moment of when we are coming into union, marriage, relationship, the way that has well, it's so beautiful to name like we should be so devoted to God before that happens, but the reality of the world we live in today, at least in our Western society, that's just like not what we are all raised inside
yeah,
of, at least in
right,
this generation.
yeah,
And just to name the beauty of the experience that so many people are having as they come home to God, coming home to God through coming home to that really safe, full, unconditional love of another person.
yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful journey. I love the. There's a quote out there that it's something to the effect of, "When I realized we're all just walking each other home, life
Mhm.
became different," and it's such a beautiful thing because it's especially after losing someone. It's the truth. We just don't know when we get home,
Mhm.
and that's hard to deal with.
Yeah. Or how something that comes up for me in there is like how many times we actually come home even like in as we are still walking in this physical, right? Like the amount of times like I felt like I was coming home through my entire spiritual awakening. I felt like I was coming home as I learned so much about trauma healing. I felt like I was coming home as I uncovered all these things about myself. And then
Right.
mostly recently it's like coming home to God and Jesus and this unconditionally loving force of like, oh my God, I'm home. And then like that just gets to continue
Right.
happening the more we
Yeah.
walk in that faith of like
True.
this.
Yeah.
I had a teacher early on in my spiritual walk that essentially said like the human experience is like forgetting so that you can remember, and then you forget and then you remember and then you forget and then you remember and then you forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
That's
such
yeah.
a beautiful part of being here in the physical is having those moments where we come back online and we're like, oh my God, like, yeah, God, yep.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
what is what's going on in your life now? The book is out. I mean, I can imagine that you are receiving, I mean, you're still pumping out so much beautiful content around this story. I can only imagine the kind of feedback that you're receiving from people who are receiving from this beautiful
Yeah,
piece
it's
that
really interesting because I've heard from a lot of people, but I know I've heard from all the people. And it's funny because I ask everyone that I get the chance to talk to that gets the book, please tell me your experience. I would really like to know. Like I actually would like to know. It's not too many conversations. And I think some people just don't want to share or they haven't read the book or whatever. But for me, I really feel like we're talking about like a sandbox earlier. I feel like this is like my sandbox. This is like what I really feel like this story is a reason that God has me here. And so I kind of put everything into to talking about it and sharing about it and just keep pushing in that direction. And it's a beautiful thing and people are really responding well and I know that it's landing for people and that's really beautiful. That's just the wake up and tell the story. And that's because for me, I've come from a coaching background for a long time. And as a coach, my goal was always just to be a window for someone to the better version of themselves. So, like in the fitness space, when someone looks at me in that time, I was like, all I want to be is something that they see the better version of themselves in. So, If it's the guy that knows how to lift a barbell, cool. They think that, okay, I can learn how to do that and be fitter so I can be the better version of me. For now, I still do some stuff in the coaching space, but I just want to be a window to God.
Mm.
So if you see me moving in the world, the end point is God. Now, that could mean a lot of things, right? But currently with this story, right? The end point, well, my my target for someone is God.
Yeah.
It's not the end, but that's the target, right? So I feel very good about that. And then that's kind of where I see my position right now. So if it's speaking, if it's coaching, if it's writing, if it's whatever it is, it's the same point, the same aim, and yeah.
And how more beautifully could God utilize such a depth of a story and such a depth of pain and such a
Yeah.
depth of uncertainty than that, right? Like I know that none of that will ever, we were talking about this before the podcast, like there is joy and there's inspiration and there's these God moments, and none of that takes away from the sadness of the human experience and specifically what you have had to go through. But I don't know, I just find like the deeper I go in the maturation of my walk with him, it's that letting go of the outcomes or our own expectations and just fully trusting in.
Yeah. Well, there have been a couple things. So I think we can agree that life is a gift. I think it's fairly obvious, but she was a gift to me. Her life was a gift to me. So if I can say that her life was a gift, I have to be able to say that my life is a gift. Okay, well, if your life is a gift, if my life is a gift, what am I doing with my gift?
Mm,
Because a gift is meant to be given, right?
yeah.
It's not meant to end. So there's a hard thing, and like, okay, well, then what are you going to do with this? Because as a person that's lost someone, you don't want to do anything. It's like, well, that's not really what you're saying. And there's getting caught in between those two is really hard. It feels like you're kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place. Um, and then also there's the thing of like, well, how long do we have here? Because I never would have believed that my wife was going to die at 35, that my children would grow up without their mother. I never would have believed that. It's like, all right, well, I'm 44. So who says I've got a whole bunch of time? What if I get hit by a truck tomorrow? Because it doesn't matter your plans. It doesn't matter that you wanted to do this in 10 years. That doesn't matter. What matters is how you show up today. If you show up in a loving, intentional way today, that's what matters. And that has become very, very, it's a very on my mind all the time. Because when you look back after you lose someone, all you have to look back at is a whole bunch of nows. And what you're going to do is you're going to rate yourself on how you showed up for your person in your nows. So all you can do moving forward is show up in your nows.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more I'm distracted, the more that I'm drawn out of this moment, the more that I don't show up in this moment.
Yeah.
There's a really beautiful quote. I wish it's in one of these books I was reading, but it basically was like something about the lavish gift that is given like by Jesus in the now.
Mm.
It's right now. That's it. It does not in 10 minutes. It's not tomorrow. It's not yesterday. It's right now. And there's so much to that. And losing someone really, really throttles you. And so if I'm going to go through with my day and I'm going to show up tonight and I'm going to show up tomorrow, I'm going to show up as I believe, bringing the thumbs up. The best we can do is the best version of us.
Yeah.
So how do we pull that best version of us forward? I think that's the way to go about my time.
Yeah.
And then if I'm talking to you, how do I bring the best version of you forward? Like, what can I do right now to serve you to bring the best of you forward? And then my kids. And then, what I'm saying? Like, you're going, because the greatest commandment of all is love God. Second one's
Mm-hmm.
love each other.
Because it's the same thing.
Same thing, right? Okay, so there's a lot of things that I have no interest in after losing her.
Yeah.
I've lost a taste for so much. I don't care about so much anymore. Like, I don't care. If there's someone that isn't willing to pursue a friendship, that's okay. but I'm not going to pursue you. We don't have the time. And that's no fault. I'm not upset. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? It's like I'm here to find harmony with people in my life. And I hope I get another day. I don't know.
Right. It brings me to, and that's been coming up for me a lot, and in a lot of places. I mean, it came up in this book. It comes up, obviously, it's a piece of scripture, it comes up in scripture, but
Yeah.
something I've been navigating. I know I named a little earlier, like I'm going through a big transition in my business, and I see the way that God is working in so many beautiful ways of like what is being poured through. And I have that same redirection you were just naming of like, it used to be about like, how can I help people see the highest version of themselves? How can I
Yeah.
connect them to their highest self so that they can be the best and that they can create all of these things in their lives? Because that's
Yeah.
what I believed was actually truly helping people. And now navigating into this deep relationship with God, and it's like, actually, how can I just connect people to that?
Right.
Because that is the truth of what is going to pour through them to create whatever is the most
Yeah.
sustenance inside of their lives. But the piece of scripture, just the daily bread, like, can I wake up and in this moment be so grateful for the bed I got to sleep in, the air in my lungs, the food that is provided for me, the fact that there actually is enough of everything, and also just open my eyes and thank God again, like you said, for another day, and really
Yeah.
recognizing what these days are, and that
Because
it is,
it can all go away.
and that it's just a bunch of moments strung together. And how do you want to experience those moments? Because as soon as the moment's gone, it's gone. It makes me think so often existentially about, like, I don't remember probably 90% of my moments from yesterday. If I really
Right.
sat and thought about it, I could maybe recall 5 to 10% of the moments from yesterday.
Yeah.
And how much and how often we get caught up on, like you said, the so much that you're no longer interested in, and like almost what it, as deep and as painful as these things that walk us home to God can be, also the transformation it gifts us of no longer being willing to or absent enough to waste the gift that we're being
Yeah.
given with each moment.
And there's an interesting thought called it's margin, and it's in the book I've been reading. And it's like, well, how much margin is in your, and margin is like your ability to like withstand something versus, or your capacity to withstand something versus the capacity of what you're carrying, basically. So like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I could carry more weight effectively, right? But we don't have margin in our lives. We don't have monetary margin. We don't have time margin. We don't have mental margin. We don't have relational margin. Like, how much how much time do you have to just sit there and like look at the sky?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's margin. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're, and I was thinking about that, I was like, man, there's like none ever. And grant, like, I have children, of course. I have like, there are reasons that there's no margin, but it's also like, well, if we're looking for something in our lives, we ought to create margin
Yeah.
some way. I don't know how you do it, but to say that you're wanting for something and you have no margin, it's like, okay, well, let's create some space for the thing. It's like if you want like I don't know, a new couch in your living room, well, there needs to be space for the couch.
Mm-hmm.
If there's not space, what are you doing? And I think most of us are seeking things and we don't have margin
Yeah.
in many ways, right? It's
Yeah.
because of the distractions of our life.
And instead of seeking things that give us more margin, we actually end up seeking things that just take up more space.
Yeah, because I know that if you're seeking God, what's that quote that's like, you can't hear God when things are loud because he's whispering, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Like, he whispers. So if you're loud, you can't hear him. Like, you've got to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet comes in margin. Quiet comes when you sit with your thoughts. And sitting with your thoughts is scary sometimes. A lot of people are scared of that. And that's okay. Slowing down, I was jolted to a halt in my life multiple times. And because of that margin, there's been some beauty that has shown up,
Yeah.
and I would trade all of the beauty for her back. But that's not how life goes. And that's hard.
Hard thing to accept. I mean, we were talking about this just before we got started too, just the I was joking around before Danny and I jumped into conversation about a conversation I had with my mom recently that was like, why didn't you warn me what life was going to look like? Why didn't you tell
Yeah.
me what this was actually about and like let me know when I was a kid? And just the maturation into spirituality and into God, and that a piece of that is a deep acceptance that we have no control and that we don't, and that like the this is something that's landed really hard for me in my walk with God, is that like if it weren't for pain and grief and sadness and all of the things that feel so hard about humanity, we also wouldn't have the gift of their opposite. And that's been a really deep integration in my walk of like, if we want any of this, we have to accept all of that, all of it. And it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy the other day who lost his son, and we were talking about this. Like we like the highs, we don't like the lows, and but because we guard against the lows, I think we miss the highs
Mm-hmm.
because it's an experience. It's a positive and negative experience. It returns to normalcy, but it goes high and it goes low. And what I've learned about love is that, let's say I was standing on the mountaintop of love when she was here. And I was like, this is amazing. This is the best my life could ever be. Right. What I've seen in the past 11 months since losing her is the mountain that I was standing on can just gets tossed into the ocean of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And the depth of the experience is so expansive, which ultimately is a beautiful thing. But unless you get forced into it, you're probably not going to go there. But that's life, right? Life is feeling.
Yeah.
It's being okay with feeling. It's like how many people, if you were sitting on a bench in the sunshine and all of a sudden, bam, it's a thunderstorm, how many people are going to stay on the bench? Because that's what grief is like.
Mm.
And the ability to just sit there and be just as grateful that you have this experience is when I feel like you're starting to integrate the thing. And it's hard because it's not comfortable. I mean, you get crying at the grocery store, crying in traffic, crying it happens all the time, and it's swallowing you up. It's just taking you over. But you've earned that, right? You had the love that warranted that experience, and it's like that's cool, and it's cool.
Yeah. And it's
It
such a
hurts,
powerful,
but
it's,
I would not. I wouldn't trade to get out of the pain that I have now. If I didn't get to experience life with her, I
yeah.
wouldn't trade it. Whatever, not a
Yeah.
chance.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll wear it.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful perspective, I think, just to land for anybody listening. Because, like we named, I mean, whether you've gone through a massive loss in your life through the form of losing someone or through any other thing that happens to us as human beings that can throw you into that wave of uncertainty and sadness and pain, like the other side of the spectrum of the feelings that we're always running so hard from. And like what you're naming in that is like finding gratitude inside of that is the gift of God, is the relationship with God, is
Right.
the like the knowing, the deep faith, the deep understanding, and not just in a way that like somebody else has told you to believe this or like grab onto that because so and so said so, but in like a deeply experiential way, right? I don't think anybody comes to their hands and knees in gratitude in the depth of grief because somebody else told them to believe in such a thing, right? But the experience that we're gifted through having a relationship with God that allows those moments to actually be something that feels somehow beautiful, even in the depth of how painful it can be.
Yeah, I mean it's a it's like it'd be like no, I want to buy half a box of crayons. Like I don't want the other half. I don't want the dark colors. It's not part of the experience. And like yeah, man, it's like that's what you get. You get all the colors. Well, I don't want them all. It's like well, that's not how this works. And that's not how grief works in love. I think if you want the love, you've already earned the grief. You just haven't felt it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that though softens your heart because I can tell you now, like I saw a girl cry in the car the other day. in traffic, and I almost got out and hugged her. Like, so empathetic to everything.
Yeah.
That's really a gift. That's connection, and that's really, it's a beautiful thing. It's painful, but you know. Also, people say, they're like, well, childbirth is such a beautiful thing. Well, that's painful too.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I don't know, I've watched my wife do it twice, and it's a wonder of the world,
Yeah.
and so it's just hard to feel the pain,
Absolutely.
but it's also okay. It's okay to feel it. There's no end date.
Right. And that's a huge thing to swallow too, that we don't get to just be like, okay, I'll feel this until, and then it'll be
Yeah.
gone, and then I don't have to do it anymore.
Well,
But like
and
you
it's the thing,
mentioned,
like, you can run all you
but you
want, and
can't hide.
it just follows you, and yeah, it's hard. It's part of the deal.
Yeah. Well, I just want to name first, like, a deep, deep gratitude for the way in which you have taken a portion of your journey and channeled some of that pain. And I know that it was a healing process for you. But on the other side, like our second conversation, the other side of reading this book, like, thank you for the gift of her and the way that you've remembered her and the way that you were able to put these words into a perspective that, like, truly from the bottom of my heart, like, I mean, it touched me and my husband so deeply. It touched me in ways that weren't even just like, oh my God, this incredible story, but in ways that I've reflected to you that are mirroring back to me, like my own devotion to God. And I cannot even begin to imagine. I think of a lot of things these days in being of service in like the ripple effect, right? And that like
Yeah.
one drop in a still lake creates a ripple effect that is absolutely insurmountable,
Yeah.
and the ripple effect that like this has already have and gets to continue to have. And I just think about even the nature of reality and the way how I name to you, like I have a friend right now who's going through a cancer journey, and like I'm done with this book, so I'm going to pass it on to her, right? And then like what
Amazing.
are
Yeah.
the ways in which that strengthens her relationship to God and her faith in her journey. And I just, of course, it's all about walking it back to him, and it doesn't happen without him, but there is a really real human nature to gratitude to the human who allows themselves to be a vessel for such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think our job is just to extend the invitation, right? It's like, and then whoever receives the invitation can decide what to do with it. But I love the thought that book will go out into the world and imbalance, let's say, like the vulnerability in people's lives. Like, it will make someone take a look at their own life and how they show up in their own life and how valuable their people are and their time is and their moments, and that they will show up differently in their lives. Not that it will change my life, but it will change their life.
Yeah.
That they'll read it and be like, man, I need to show up for my husband. I need to show up for my wife. I need to show up for my kids. Because these days we have are numbered, and none of us have the number. And I hope that it does that, and that it's an invitation for people to have that conversation with God. Like, it's the stack of evidence that someone uses to be like, okay, I'm going to try this out.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I hope for the book.
Absolutely. So, is there any last thing that you are feeling is on your heart that you want to share about this experience, about where you're at now, about anything that's moving through?
I always say to people that are losing someone or that have lost someone, you're not alone. And it feels very lonely, and it feels like you're on an island that's just moving further and further away from the mainland. And as time goes on, people stop reaching out, and all these things happen. But you're not alone, and people care, and that's a huge thing, because it's grief is very lonely. It's an invisible thing that you carry that no one else knows about, unless you're willing to share. And sometimes when you share, people don't respond well, and that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them, but it doesn't feel very good on this side of the equation. So just, you're not alone.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Honestly, like so many things
Yeah, so I'm happy to do it. I'm just
from
on to tell the
from
story.
the synchronistic way in which this now like friendship formed, to being able to receive this book, to sharing your journey and your story, not just with me but with inevitably thousands of people who will continue to receive from this. And
I hope it helps. I hope it helps someone, and yeah, I hope someone feels seen. Helps
mhm,
someone feel seen, and gives them hope. I really, hope's one of those things no one can take from you,
mhm,
and sometimes it's all you've got. And I believe it's there. It's always there, and it's because it comes from Him.
yeah.
So
Absolutely. Final question, as always. I mean, it's in the book, guys. I'm going to drop the link to the book down below. If this conversation and our last conversation that I know that you already went back and listened to
Yeah,
has not
right.
already convinced you, let me beg you, please. This book is, like I said, it is not just a story. I mean, it says on the cover, a story of love, loss, and hope, and it is all of those things and so much more. And I just really feel this being such like one of those staple books that you can just like pass from person to person to person, of like, this thing like did something to me, let's see what it does in you.
Yeah.
And it's just such a testament, like you said, like we've talked so much about, of it all inevitably pointing back to God and the beauty of the relationship that we get the gift of having with him while we are here in this physical, and the full spectrum of what that truly means.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you would like to platform, anything else going on in your world, in your life, how people can find you?
Well, there's my Instagram, which is Momentum with Danny, which is where probably most of the stuff tees off from. I do have a website which houses like the podcast, so like this podcast will live there. It's at Danny Lesslie. My last name is Lesslie. It's spelled on the screen. .co, and there's there all the podcasts live there. A bunch of testimonials from the book live there. There's some coaching stuff there. It's all going to be there. It's going to be the hub for everything. So that's kind of the place that I would send people.
Amazing. Yeah. So please go check out the book, follow Danny. I am just personally so excited to get to continue in this friendship and get to continue to see
It's
where
great.
this
Very exciting.
book and the story and everything that you are allowing yourself to become in God to continue to move forward. It feels really fun, to have this conversation and to have these synchronistic moments in my own life, mirrored by someone who has walked a completely different life, of like, it all just, at this point, it all comes back to how can I connect people home to God. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, your vulnerability, this beautiful piece of work. And for all of you who are listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for riding through this episode. And if you can, please take a moment to like, share, comment, subscribe. Send this episode in particularly out to anyone you know that you see could benefit, whether it be just from this conversation or from the reality of this book that we're discussing here, because it is not without the listeners and the people who consume things like this that the ripple effect gets to continue.
Yeah. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Of course.